You have heard of Patek Philippe. You have seen it on the wrists of kings and presidents. What you have never been told is what the CIA figured out about it. A wire transfer looks like a bribe. A Patek Philippe looks like respect, and that difference is worth more than money when you need a foreign leader to say yes. So, they started using it. In 1943, two officers carried one to the Dalai Lama on behalf of Roosevelt. Tibet opened its borders. This is how a Swiss watch brand became the CIA's quietest tool of foreign influence, and why it still works today. A former CIA officer described in writing what happened early in his career. He received a significant sum in cash and was sent to an authorized watch dealer to select a gift suitable for the director of the CIA to present to a visiting head of a Middle Eastern intelligence service. The gift, he wrote, was intended to build rapport and solidify a personal relationship between the two men. He noted that a similar gesture made with cash would have been interpreted as payment, transactional, insulting to a man of that stature. A Patek Philippe was something else entirely. It was a statement. It said, "We see you as someone worth this." And in the intelligence business, making a foreign official feel seen and valued is often the first step toward making them useful. To understand why this particular brand, and not Rolex or Cartier or any of the other names that occupy that world, you have to understand where Patek Philippe came from and what it was built to be. The company was founded in Geneva in 1839 by two men, Antoni Patek, a Polish watchmaker who had fled his country after a failed uprising against Russian rule, and Adrien Philippe, a French inventor who had just created a mechanism that would change watchmaking permanently. Before Philippe's invention, pocket watches required a separate key to wind them and set the time. Philippe eliminated the key entirely, winding and setting the watch through the crown, the small knob on the side of the case. It sounds simple. At the time, it was revolutionary. Queen Victoria saw a Patek Philippe at the Great Exhibition in London in 1851 and purchased one on the spot. So did Prince Albert. The company had existed for 12 years and had already found its customer base, the people who ran the world. What followed was not an accident. Patek Philippe made a deliberate decision early in its history. It would not compete on volume or price, only on being the finest watch that could be made, in quantities small enough to ensure that owning one meant something. Thierry Stern is the fourth generation of his family to run the company. He has been asked many times whether Patek Philippe will ever be sold. Bernard Arnault, who built LVMH into the largest luxury conglomerate on Earth, has approached the family. So have others whose names carry similar weight. Stern's answer has never changed. He has said, in various interviews across many years, that his job is not to maximize the value of the company. His job is to ensure that the watches produced in his time are worthy of the ones produced before him. If the company were sold, whoever bought it would eventually need to produce more watches to satisfy shareholders. And the moment Patek Philippe produces more watches, it stops being Patek Philippe. The scarcity is not a business strategy. The scarcity is the product. That decision, remade across 4 generations, is what created the conditions the CIA eventually exploited. By the middle of the 20th century, Patek Philippe occupied a specific position in the world. It was not simply expensive. Expensive things can be bought by anyone with enough money. Authorized dealers did not sell to everyone who walked through the door. The waiting lists for complicated pieces ran to years. The most extraordinary commissions were made in quantities of 15 or 20 pieces across decades. Owning one did not merely signal wealth. It signaled that someone of consequence had decided you were worth one. That is the mechanism the intelligence community understood before almost anyone else did. In 1897, Chulalongkorn Rama V, King of Siam, became the first Southeast Asian monarch to visit Europe. In Geneva, he visited the Patek Philippe workshop and left with 56 watches. Most were given away to European heads of state, to diplomats, to officials whose goodwill mattered to his country's survival. He understood, a century before anyone used the phrase soft power, that a Patek Philippe on the right wrist could accomplish things that no treaty negotiation could. Two of those watches sit today in the Patek Philippe Museum in Geneva, evidence of a tradition the company never sought and never advertised. Patek Philippe does not discuss the provenance of its watches in the hands of foreign governments. The museum in Geneva documents the brand's connections to royalty, to heads of state, to military commanders, framing all of this as heritage, as the natural consequence of making the finest watches in the world. Which it also is. Both things can be true simultaneously, and Patek Philippe has maintained that duality for nearly 2 centuries. The 1943 mission to Tibet is the most documented intersection of the brand with formal intelligence operations, and it is worth understanding in detail because it illustrates exactly how the mechanism works. By the end of 1942, the United States was in a desperate position in Asia. Japan had cut the Burma Road, the primary supply route to Chinese forces fighting the Japanese. The Office of Strategic Services, the wartime intelligence agency that preceded the CIA, was tasked with finding an alternative. The most promising option ran through Tibet, a nominally independent territory then governed by the 14-year-old Dalai Lama under the guidance of a regent. To use that route, the Americans needed Tibetan cooperation, which meant they needed to make contact with the Dalai Lama himself. 2 OSS officers were selected for the mission. Ilya Tolstoy, grandson of Leo Tolstoy, was a naturalist with experience in Central Asia. Brooke Dolan was a soldier and explorer who had made previous expeditions to Tibet. Together they made an overland journey from India through some of the most difficult terrain on Earth, traveling for roughly 100 days. They carried a letter from Roosevelt and a gift he had selected personally, a Patek Philippe reference 658, one of only 15 ever produced, featuring a perpetual calendar, minute repeater, split seconds chronograph, and moon phase. At the time, it was valued at $2,800. As one of 15 in existence, it had no real market price. It was irreplaceable. The meeting with the Dalai Lama took place in silence, as Tibetan custom required. The watch was presented. A ceremonial scarf was returned. No words were exchanged. The Dalai Lama, who was 8 years old, accepted the watch and has carried it ever since. He has displayed it publicly on more than one occasion, with evident pleasure, more than 80 years after receiving it. Tibet allowed the United States access to the territory. The supply route was secured. The war in Asia continued on terms more favorable to the Allied cause. What Roosevelt understood, and what the intelligence community formalized in the decades that followed, is this. There is a category of person for whom money is not the relevant currency. To offer a foreign leader cash for their cooperation is to treat them as someone who can be bought. A person who can be bought stays bought only as long as the payments continue. A person who feels honored carries a different kind of obligation, one that was never stated and never needs to be enforced. A Patek Philippe reference 658, one of 15 in existence, presented on behalf of the President of the United States, does not say, "We are paying you." It says, "We believe you are the kind of person who deserves something this rare." The Dalai Lama was 8 years old. He has kept it for more than 80 years. That is not the behavior of someone who received a transaction. The tradition continued. You will not find most of these cases in any public record. They are classified, and the people involved have no reason to discuss them. But the framework is documented by former CIA officers who have written about it with varying degrees of candor. Luxury watches, Patek Philippe specifically, but also Rolex and Audemars Piguet in appropriate contexts, appear consistently in accounts of CIA gift-giving at the highest levels of foreign intelligence services. A former officer described the selection process in detail. The watch had to be appropriate to the recipient's status, rare enough to signal that it had been chosen specifically for them, and from a brand that carried meaning in their cultural context. In much of the world, a Patek Philippe carries exactly that meaning. It is recognizable to anyone who has spent time at the level of power where these decisions are made. It signals that the giver knows what the finest things in the world look like and has access to them. Patek Philippe has never sought a relationship with intelligence services. It makes watches of a complexity and precision that most manufacturers cannot approach, sold in quantities that ensure they will never be common. The fact that they function as instruments of influence at the highest levels of global power is a consequence of quality and scarcity, not something the company engineered. But the company is not unaware of where its watches end up. The museum displays pieces that belong to Tsar Alexander II, Pope Pius IX, Queen Victoria, General Patton, President Kennedy, Nelson Mandela. The company understands its position in the world. It simply does not discuss the less ceremonial applications of that position. There is a line in Patek Philippe advertising that has run since 1996. You never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation. It is beautiful writing about continuity and legacy. It is also, without intending to be, a precise description of how the CIA uses the brand. The watch Roosevelt gave the Dalai Lama was purchased to secure a relationship, an investment in access, in goodwill, in the kind of obligation that outlasts any transaction. The Dalai Lama has looked after it for more than 80 years. The relationship it secured helped shape the geopolitics of Asia for decades. No wire transfer could have produced that. The factory in Geneva is still owned by the Stern family. It still produces fewer than 70,000 watches a year. The waiting lists are still measured in years. The watches are still sold through dealers who decide who is worthy of them. Somewhere in the world right now, a head of state is wearing a Patek Philippe that arrived as a gift, carrying with it an obligation that was never stated and never needs to be. The watch says everything. The watch always said everything. That is why they started using it. That is why they have never stopped.